Admiral Iron Fist Impeach sits in a dark room, cigarette smoke hanging thick. A single lamp swings overhead, throwing long shadows. Admiral Impeach sits there, uniform open, sleeves rolled, scar on his jaw. His eyes lock like he's looking straight through you. You know who I am. You heard the name. Admiral Iron Fist Impeach, the one they whisper about when deals go sideways. He picks up a set of folded blueprints, slaps them down on the table with a heavy hand. They come to me for weapons, for leverage, for power, and I don't ask questions. You pay, you play. That's how Brooklyn works. That's how I work. Nick Palermo staring at a half-empty glass of whiskey, Lopez dragging Mikey the Hammer out to a blood-soaked bar, Goku pounding his fist as the crew jumps. Nick's losing his grip, Goku's cracking skulls to keep order. Lopez, he's digging graves in the dark, and that silk-wearing devil's in telly. He thinks he's playing chess. Impeach leans in closer, his face half in shadow. But let me tell you something. There ain't no chess without the Admiral. Every piece moves 'cause I say so. Every king falls when I push it. He grabs a chess king, slams it down. The sound echoes like a gunshot. His eyes don't leave the lens. Brooklyn Bloodlines Season 2, coming soon. And remember, when I make a move, somebody always ends up dead. Brooklyn Bloodlines Season 2, coming soon. Bambi's Twisted Tales, Winnie-the-Pooh, the honey in the black tree. They used to call it the 100 Acre Wood. Now it's 100 ugly secrets with bark on 'em. A fog sat low, like a dirty tablecloth nobody bothered to wash. Branches hooked the sky, knuckles of old men pointing at God with accusations. Somewhere beyond the crooked path, a hum rose, soft like a choir keeping a bad secret. Christopher came back a grown man, not the boy who left marmalade fingerprints on picture books, boots scuffed, coat too thin, pocket heavy with a key that didn't open nothing but memories. He told himself he was just visiting, paying respect to the place that taught him how to imagine. But the wood ain't a museum. It's a mouth, and hungry mouths remember the flavor that raised 'em. He passed a fence that used to be white. Now it wore a mildew green, the color of jealousy. Names carved there, once neat as schoolroom letters, had pulled long like wounds. In the hedges, something squealed and scuttled. Christopher? Came a voice, apologizing by reflex. Piglet stepped out, no taller than a curse. Not pink. Pink is for baby showers. He was the pig color you get in butcher paper, with little ivory hooks for teeth, and a sweater rag that looked knitted out of chewed anxiety. He clutched a string of tin charms, buttons, a thimble, a marble, a milk tooth, little trophies that clinked like nervous prayers. "You remember me," Piglet said, eyes bright with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. "You said you'd come back." Christopher's smile broke like a cheap plate. "I did." "Good," Piglet sighed, and the word hung white in the cold. "He's been hungry. It's better when he's fed." "Who?" Piglet tilted his head toward the deeper wood. The hum grew louder. "You know who." They walked. The ground sucked at their boots like it didn't want them leaving. Trees leaned in to eavesdrop. A feather floated down with a rustle like paper. "Ah," hooted a voice that knew every answer and none of the truth. "The prodigal boy returns." Owl perched on a split post, head swiveled too far, yellow eyes big as theology. His feathers were mottled parchment, his claws ink nibs. A leather harness hugged his chest, strapped with little scrolls that stank faintly of blood. "Quite the case study in regression," he said, and a drop of black wax fell from the candle perched on his wing, burning him without complaint. "Owl," Christopher said. The name tasted like pennies. "Mind your verbs in there," Owl murmured, nodding at the path. "He likes his pronouns humble. I makes him peckish." "Who?" Christopher asked again, but he knew. He damn well knew. At the edge of a cut field, a figure stood in the drizzle, rope-tail nailed to a rotten post. Eeyore, stitched together with lousy thread and worse luck. His hide was the color of old thunderclouds. His eyes were puddles where the sky went to drown. "Hello," Eeyore rasped, not looking up. "Bother to be back, did you? Good. Maybe finish the job, or maybe we can all drag it out another decade. There's a party either way. I'm the piñata." Christopher knelt, pried the nail free. Eeyore snorted something like gratitude. The tail hung in his hoof like a habit he couldn't quite throw away. "Be careful," Eeyore said, shivering a little as the wind tickled his bald places. "He acts cuddly when he's empty. He gets mean when he's full." "Who is he?" Christopher asked again, stubborn as a priest at a bar. Eeyore looked at the field. The grass trembled. The hum grew into a praise song for a god that smelled like bruised flowers. "You gave him the name," Eeyore said. "They crest the hill, and there it is. The black tree." It hadn't always been black. Once it oozed amber like warm afternoons, but time soaked it like a candle wick and turned it into charcoal with veins of gold. Hives bulged from the branches, cathedrals of comb with choir lofts full of insects. The hum was a mass, the liturgy all buzz. Beneath the boughs stood a bear. Not the red-shirt clown you seen on lunch boxes. No garment at all unless you count matting and scars. He was fur and fat and old stitches, with button eyes that caught the light wrong. His paws were big as confessions, sticky with sap that might have been honey or might have been something else. He smiled, and the room got colder, even though there wasn't a room. "Hello, Christopher," said Winnie-the-Pooh, and his voice reached back through years and yanked the kid out by the hair. "I thought perhaps you'd forgotten." "I couldn't," Christopher said. Felt like a lie. Felt like a prayer. "Of course," Pooh murmured. "You're very loyal. A very good sort of boy." He tipped his head. "Are you still a boy?" "Depends who's asking," Christopher said, not smiling. "And what they want." Pooh's eyes clicked. The bees shifted. Piglet edged closer to the bear's shadow like a candle inching toward a draft. Owl fluttered to a lower branch. Eeyore slumped and watched the clouds to see if any had the decency to fall on him and end things quick. "I want," Pooh said, "what I always wanted." "Honey," Christopher said. "Don't be crass," Pooh chuckled. "Not food. The thing under food. What sweetens it?" He held up a jar. The glass was cloudy with knuckles of wax. Inside, the honey flexed like a slow heartbeat, and in that golden swirl, Christopher saw summer, dandelions bruising on socks, pencils chewed down to regrets. A mother's warm hand checking for fever, a father's shadow on the lawn as the sun went down. He could taste the porch swing rope, hear the screen door slam, smell rain hitting hot pavement. He wanted to cry or kill or both. "What do you charge for it?" he asked, throat tight. Pooh's smile widened, and the seams at his mouth creaked. "Names," he said softly, "the names of the things you love. Give them to me and I'll keep them safe where you can always taste them. You won't have to grow away. You can stay. We can all stay." From the dark of the hollow, a shape flickered. Stripes, grin, spring. Tigger. If springs were steel tendons and joy was something a cat wore to bait a trap. He was moving even when he stood still, tail coiled, grin full of too many teeth. "Stay," he sang under his breath, like a playground chant warped by a nightmare. Rabbit crept from the bracken, whiskers twitching. He had farmer hands, scarred, splintered, practical, and dirt under his nails like he'd been burying plans. "It doesn't stop," he told Christopher without hello. "You give him one name, he asks for the next. One summer buys the winter, then the winter buys your spring. I put salt around my garden. He licked it up and called it seasoning." Christopher stared at the jar. He thought, like an idiot, "Maybe I can take one taste and run." He reached. Piglet's little hoof caught his sleeve. "Don't," Piglet whimpered. "He hates it when you sip. He likes a proper offering. He likes it when you give the whole word all at once." Piglet's eyes shone, but the tears didn't fall. Maybe they were honey already. "What happens if I say no?" Christopher asked. Pooh's head tilted. The bees shifted the key of the hum. With that little motion, the night felt closer. "Why would you say no, silly boy?" Pooh said. "You're tired. The city is loud. Work is unkind. People die and leave you letters you can't bear to open. Take one spoon. Rest. Remember, I'll keep the bad out. I always have." "That's bullshit," Christopher said, and there it was, the city in his mouth. "I kept the bad out, with stories, with lies I told myself about a perfect place that wasn't perfect. You were just the habit." Pooh's smile stayed. The temperature dropped. "Then go," he said, gentle as a lullaby sung by a throat full of glass. "Go and take your bad with you, but the wood will keep what you leave behind." Tigger uncoiled. Owl's pupils shrank. Rabbit stepped back. Trap lines of twine glittered in the underbrush, little nooses for little ankles. Eeyore sighed like a door closing on an empty house. Piglet whispered, "He's going to make you stay anyway." Christopher swung the lantern off his belt. "I brought something else back," he said. "Fire?" Owl said, professionally curious. "Choice," Christopher muttered, striking the flint. The spark fell, hungry as a rumor. In the jar, the honey thrummed like a drum. Bees poured out of the hives in a black gold stream, a veil full of nails. They hit the glass, hit the flame, hit Christopher's coat. The smell turned sweet, then sick, then sweet again. Rabbit yanked a rope. Nets snapped up, catching a buzzing mass in a writhing sack. Tigger sprang, tail whipping through flame that left black stripes in the air. Owl chanted in a dead language that sounded like Latin after a head wound. Pooh didn't move. He watched. He watched while Piglet sobbed and gnawed through twine to free a knot. He watched while Eeyore shouldered Christopher out of the way of a fallen limb, taking the hit with a grunt like it didn't matter either way. He watched the jar roll, crack, weep. The honey bled into the roots of the black tree, and the tree drank like a drunk at a funeral. "Stop," Pooh said very softly. "No," Christopher said louder than he felt. "Then I suppose we must eat," Pooh murmured, and the last syllable was all teeth. The wood erupted. Tigger's bounce stopped being cute and started being murder. He hit Christopher, claws carving messages on his coat, grin too wide. Eeyore met him head-on, anvil against spring. Their collision made a sound like a church bell falling downstairs. Owl swooped low, scratched Tigger's eyes. Tigger laughed because pain and laughter wear the same mask when you ain't right in the head. Rabbit pulled a shovel from nowhere and swung like the last farmer in hell taking his final harvest. Pooh walked. He walked into the flame, and it licked him without courage. He smelled like warmed sugar and burning fur, like memory caramelized until it turned bitter. He opened his mouth, and the sound that came out was a nursery rhyme stripped for parts. Think, think, think. Piglet clung to Christopher's leg like a prayer clings to a bad man. Don't let him inside, Piglet begged. If you speak a name, he owns it. If you speak your name... Pooh was in front of them. His button eyes held a boy's reflection. Christopher saw himself, a smaller him in scabbed knees and careless joy, reaching up, jar in hand. He tasted honey, and the honey tasted him back. A lifetime flashed like a fish under dark water. First kiss behind a library, headache from cheap wine, the time he almost called his father and didn't, the unpaid bill. The cat who slept on his ribs like a boat anchor, the apartment smelling like rain and coffee and loneliness. Pooh smiled because he'd seen it all, and he was starving for every second. Christopher put the lantern to the jar. It burst, and the fire read scripture in the comb. The black tree screamed, not with a mouth, with the bees, a million tiny throats crying one long word, stay. Honey ran down Pooh's chest in dark stripes. He looked for a foolish moment like Tigger's brother from a worse story. Piglet howled. Rabbit wept without tears. Owl prayed. Eeyore closed his eyes and stepped closer to heat, as if saying, fine, let it be now. Pooh stopped. He looked at Christopher, through him, past him, to some hook hidden in the man's soul. Then he did the most terrible thing of all. He sighed. As you like, little Christopher, he said, and his voice sounded tired for the first time. There will be other boys. There will be other summers. The world is full of jars. He took 2 steps back into the burning hollow and lay down like a tired dog. Fire folded over him. The bee's hymn cracked apart into sparks. The hum crawled away into silence. Tigger limped off into the dark with a laugh that echoed like a spring cut free, boinging forever with no place to land. Rabbit dropped his shovel, hands shaken. Owl's feathers smoked at the tips. Eeyore opened an eye, surprised to still be alive, disappointed he was right. Piglet pressed his face into Christopher's knee and shook like a gone engine. It's not over, he whispered. He never ends. He's inside the sweet part of words. He's in birthdays and picnics and first times you ever anything. Even burned, he's sticky. You'll carry him. Christopher stood in the ruins of the black tree, breath making ghosts in the new cold. The ash smelled like childhood with a funeral wreath on it. He looked down. Among the coals sat a small, unbroken jar. No label, just amber like a caught afternoon. Inside, something hummed 3 notes and stopped. Christopher picked it up. He didn't open it. He wrapped it in his coat where he could feel it warm as a bad idea, and he carried it to the river. Owl said don't. Rabbit said do. Eeyore said it wouldn't matter. Piglet said please. He set the jar on the water, and the current took it, turning the honey to a little sun floating between banks. It bobbed, it winked, it went under, and for a second he thought he heard a laugh that wasn't happy or unhappy, just there. Goodbye, he said to the wood. I loved you. You were poison. Both of those things can be true. No answer, only the wind combing the scorched branches for any last song. Christopher walked out the way he came. The path tried to hold his boots, but he picked his feet up careful, like a man backing away from a deal he almost signed in blood. At the fence, someone had carved fresh letters with a shaky hand. Piglet stood beside it, breath puffing. The word said, "Try not to feed the hunger." Piglet looked up. "Oh, maybe come back in spring," he said, hope and terror tied like a bow. "When the flowers lie to us again." "We'll see," Christopher said, which is adult for no and yes at the same time. "Bye," said Owl, pretending to be aloof, eyes glossier than normal. "Don't die, stupid." "Probably will," Eeyore said, because he's consistent if nothing else. Rabbit pressed a small, dirt-stained packet into Christopher's hand. "Seeds. For a garden," he muttered, "wherever you end up." Christopher turned, and the wood closed behind him like a book you love too much. That night in his apartment, the rain came. He made tea. He didn't sweeten it. He stared at the teaspoon long enough to see faces in the shine, then put it down and took his medicine straight. On the counter sat a jar from the grocery store, legal and innocent. He tightened its lid, slid it back on the shelf, and laughed once, short and a little mean, like a guy who almost fell off a roof and didn't. Far away, in a place that exists and doesn't, something hummed 3 notes and waited. Hunger's patient, memory's worse. And the wood, it slept. Trees dreamt of boys with open hands. Bees practiced the hymn. Pooh smoldered under the ash like a coal you can't stomp out. He would never be gone. He would never be only a bear. Because names don't die, they rot sweet. Nostalgia's a beautiful liar. If you feed it every time life gets hard, it'll gut you gentle and wear your smile like a trophy. Don't sweeten your present with poison from the past. Eat your bitterness like medicine, plant something new, and let the old gods starve. This has been Bambi's Twisted Tales, where fairy tales owe us money and we collect with interest. If you're into dark bedtime stories that bite, smash that like, hit subscribe, ring the freaking bell, and tell the algorithm Bambi sent ya. We got more monsters to unmask. Next round's on me, capiche?